The C-17 Globemaster lumbered down the tarmac at Nellis Air Force Base, its massive engines thundering like a controlled storm. Inside the cargo hold, the smell of fuel and electronics mingled with the low murmur of crew chatter. Most of the flight officers and enlisted personnel treated it as a routine transfer cargo and personnel, en route to a joint training exercise off the California coast. Yet one figure in the corner drew no attention. Captain Lena Torres sat quietly, her back pressed against the cold metal of the cargo bay. Headphones over her ears, notebook on her lap, fingers idly scrolling over the keys of a tablet. She was dressed in standard flight gear olive drab uniform, boots polished just enough to pass inspection, but nothing suggested she belonged in a combat scenario. Most of the other passengers assumed she was an operations analyst or a tech officer assigned to track logistics. The pilots, Lieutenant Colonel Scott and Major Riley, bantered lightly over the intercom. "Flight time smooth so far," Scott said, peering at the radar screen. "Nothing like a little turbulence to remind you the universe doesn't care about your schedule." "Yeah," Riley replied. "And nothing like a training mission with Raptors to make you feel like a tourist in your own airspace." Lena didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her eyes were already on the tactical screen in front of her. Tiny blips of data scrolled across the interface, dozens of contacts flickering in and out of range. Most were just static, weather anomalies, or friendly signals, but one, just at the edge of detection, moved with a pattern that set her nerves on edge. A shudder ran through the aircraft as it passed through a pocket of turbulence. Supplies rattled in their racks, and one of the younger crew members yelped. Lena's gaze didn't shift. Her hand hovered over the tablet as she tapped a command, bringing up an encrypted feed from the flight's radar array. "That's not just interference," she muttered softly, almost to herself. The words were drowned out by the hum of the engines, but they carried weight. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Torres, is that you talking? Didn't realize we had commentary from the peanut gallery." Lena tilted her head slightly. "Pilot, there's a blip on the northeast sector. Moving fast, non-standard trajectory. I suggest checking it immediately." A pause. Static crackled. Then the co-pilot's skeptical voice. Probably just a glitch. She didn't argue. She simply pressed her lips together, eyes narrowing. The blip moved again, jerking unnaturally on the radar feed. Lena's heart rate stayed steady, but her mind began running calculations. She had seen this kind of pattern before, once, only once, and she had never forgotten it. The aircraft's intercom pinged, signaling incoming messages from the F-22 Raptor stationed nearby for the joint exercise. The voices on the other end were casual, joking with each other about formation drills, but Lena could read the subtext immediately. The pilots were unaware of the anomaly approaching their airspace. "Excuse me," Lena said, standing. Her presence had gone unnoticed until now. She walked toward the cockpit door, moving with a calm authority that seemed to slow time around her. Lieutenant Colonel Scott glanced back. "And you are?" "Captain Lena Torres. Access come frequency 44 Delta," she said, her voice measured. It was casual, almost too casual, but there was an unmistakable steel under the words. Scott froze. "Wait, 44 Delta? That's a restricted channel. Who authorized? Authorization is granted." "Valkyrie 1, she finished, almost as an afterthought. The pilots exchanged wide-eyed glances. The name landed like a hammer in the cockpit. "Valkyrie?" Riley whispered. "You mean the Valkyrie?" The cargo bay seemed to grow quieter, the hum of the engines dimming in her wake. Lena slid the tablet into her lap and began tapping commands, connecting directly to the encrypted F-22 feed. "Falcon," she said, her tone sharp now. "You've got an unidentified contact, non-cooperative. It's fast. It's intelligent, and it's entering restricted airspace. Over the secure comms, the lead F-22 pilot, calcine Falcon, stiffened. Valkyrie? I thought you were retired. His voice wavered slightly, betraying both surprise and respect. I was, she replied evenly. Until now. The turbulence intensified. The cargo shook as straps and equipment clattered. Lena's hands didn't falter as she monitored the radar feed. Every minor blip, every shift in altitude, she noted silently. Her eyes caught a tiny signature, almost invisible, moving in a pattern designed to evade detection. It was precise, calculated, malicious. Rayleigh's voice cut in, tinged with anxiety. Captain, if that's what I think it is? It is, Lena said simply. And it's hunting us. The C-17 lurched as the aircraft banked slightly to avoid a sudden air pocket. Lena gripped the tablet harder, her knuckles whitening. But outwardly, she remained calm, almost serene. Inside, her mind raced through possibilities, outcomes, contingencies, all in under 5 seconds. She was no longer just a passenger. She was the observer, the strategist, and if needed, the commander. Scott swallowed hard, finally finding his voice. Torres. I don't know if you do exactly what I say, Lena interrupted softly, yet firmly. And nothing else. The pilot blinked, realizing instinctively that resistance was pointless. The flight crew followed her instructions, and Lena began giving precise orders. Small adjustments in heading, subtle changes in power, rerouting communications, all to counteract an unseen adversary. The C-17's radar pinged again, the blip moving in unexpected patterns. Lena studied it intently. It's learning, she murmured. Every move we make, it adapts. It's not a ghost. It's something far more dangerous. Her voice over the intercom now carried authority, not just observation. Falcon, keep your eyes open. This isn't a training anomaly. I repeat, it's a live threat. I will guide you. For the first time, the pilots of the F-22 formation paid full attention to her calm, quiet voice. Orders came through flawlessly, concise, and exact. The name Valkyrie 1 resonated through the comms call sign that carried weight, reputation, and history. The turbulence subsided, leaving only the soft hum of the engines and the tense atmosphere of anticipation. Lena's gaze never left the radar. She knew this was just the beginning. One quiet passenger had shifted the balance of the sky. And now, every pilot, every crew member understood. The real mission was about to begin. The calm of the C-17 cargo bay had barely settled when the radar blip reappeared. This time, it moved faster, its course erratic, almost as if it were taunting the crew. Lena's eyes narrowed. She recognized the movement pattern immediately: tight loops, sudden accelerations, impossible maneuvers for conventional aircraft. Her fingers flew across the tablet, overlaying tactical grids and predictive trajectories. Lieutenant Colonel, it's moving again. Northeast sector, 21,000 feet. Altitude changing every 10 seconds, Lena said, her voice calm, yet edged with authority. Scott leaned closer, squinting at the radar. That doesn't make any sense. No civilian craft could move like that. Military drones maybe, but it's not registered, Lena interrupted. No transponder, no flight plan. This is unauthorized airspace entry, and it's tracking us. A jolt of turbulence shook the plane. Cargo rattled, and the hum of the engines pitched slightly. Lena's mind worked rapidly, recalling similar encounters from her past missions. The drone, or whatever this was, wasn't just flying. It was analyzing, learning, adapting. Falcon, do you read me? Lena's voice carried over the comms, calm and measured. I'm on your frequency. This is Valkyrie 1. You've got a live threat heading into restricted airspace. I can guide you to intercept. Static hissed through the comms. Then, a sharp, clipped voice came back. Valkyrie? Is that really you? It's me, she replied, her tone flat but unyielding. Focus on the signal, not my past. It's closing fast. The F-22s streaked across the sky in formation, their silhouettes sharp against the rising sun. Falcon's voice came again, more commanding now, tinged with disbelief. You were supposed to be retired. Last I heard, you'd left active missions. Why are you here? Lena ignored the question. There's no time for that. Focus on the grid. The target will reappear northeast in 3 minutes. Adjust altitude to 22,000. Do not engage until I give the mark. Inside the C-17, the crew watched Lena with a mixture of awe and disbelief. To them, she was just a quiet passenger, someone who had been reading quietly in the corner for hours. Yet now, every movement she made was precise, calculated, authoritative. She issued commands as if she were orchestrating an entire battle from a single console. Scott shook his head, unable to hide his amazement. I don't even know what she's doing, but it's working. The Raptor pilots are responding to her like she's the mission commander. Lena's fingers danced across the tablet. She overrode the C-17's external communications relay, creating an encrypted channel directly with the Raptor's targeting system. She could see their HUD displays, track the rogue drone's movements, and predict its evasive maneuvers in real time. The radar blip flared again, then vanished only to reappear a mile away, moving at impossible speed. The air inside the cargo bay seemed to tense, as if the plane itself were aware of the danger. Lena's voice broke the silence. Falcon, adjust bearing 30 degrees starboard. Cougar, flank left. I repeat, flank left. It's anticipating standard interception patterns. The drone, small and metallic, emerged from a cloud bank like a predator. It was sleek, unmarked, no insignia, and moving faster than anything manned pilots could comfortably follow. Missiles fired from its pods, but they weren't aimed to destroy, merely to disrupt, to probe defenses. Lena's eyes tracked each flare, calculating timing, trajectory, and potential impact. Inside the cockpit, Falcon gritted his teeth. This thing's not human-controlled. It's reading us. Every move we make, it adapts. How is she predicting this? She knows its signature, Riley muttered, almost under his breath. Like, she's done this before. Lena's mind flashed back to her previous mission 3 years ago. She had encountered this exact type of rogue drone during a covert operation overseas. That mission had gone catastrophically wrong too. F-22 pilots, under her guidance, had been lost due to miscalculated maneuvers. The failure had haunted her, pushed her into retirement, and yet here it was again. Same signature, same threat. And now it was hunting them. Falcon, target is adjusting for another approach. Expect jamming. Prepare for ECM interference, Lena warned. Ignore HUD readings, fly manually if necessary. I'll guide you through. Roger that, Valkyrie, Falcon replied, voice tight. Lead the way. The C-17 rocked as a nearby missile streaked past, exploding in the cloud cover. Lena didn't flinch. Hold steady. Minor course correction. 2 degrees port. The next window is 30 seconds. She adjusted the flight plan, sending subtle commands that the Raptors interpreted as direct mission orders. Each drone move, each human pilot's reaction was accounted for. This was no longer a training flight. It was a live engagement. And Lena Torres, the quiet passenger, was commanding it. Suddenly, the rogue drone split into multiple radar blips decoys designed to confuse. Falcon cursed over the comms. They've got us on false targets. Lena's eyes narrowed. Don't engage the decoys. I'll isolate the real signature. Cougar, trust my mark. Falcon, maintain formation, but hold weapons fire. I'll call it. Her hands worked furiously over the tablet, triangulating, filtering, and predicting. Sweat dotted her brow, but her voice remained calm. Each command she issued was precise, leaving no room for error. The C-17 pilots watched silently, realizing they were witnessing a master at work. 3-2, 1 mark. Lena called. Falcon's F-22 fired, missiles streaking through the air with precision. The rogue drone dodged, releasing chaff and electronic flares, but Lena's calculations had anticipated the move. Seconds later, a missile struck true, igniting the drone in a controlled explosion. Fire illuminated the clouds, streaking across the horizon like a comet. Silence followed, except for the heavy breathing of the C-17 crew. Lena leaned back slightly, allowing herself a moment of relief. She didn't speak immediately. Her mind already ran through contingency plans if more threats appeared. Falcon's voice came again, softer this time. Valkyrie, I thought you were done. I didn't think anyone could do what you just did. She shrugged lightly, almost dismissively. I didn't, I just remembered. The comms went silent as the adrenaline faded. Inside the cargo bay, the young enlisted crew exchanged wide-eyed glances. The quiet passenger in the corner reading, tapping on her tablet, pretending to be just another face in the crowd, had just orchestrated a live aerial engagement that no one else could have managed. Scott finally spoke, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. I don't know what just happened, but she saved us. All of us? Lena looked at him without expression. Remember this. It's not about being noticed. It's about seeing what others can't and acting before it's too late. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, painting streaks of orange and gold across the sky. The C-17 continued its flight, calm once more, but now everyone on board knew they had just glimpsed a force far beyond ordinary. A quiet passenger had become the commander of the sky, and the story of Valkyrie 1 was no longer just a legend whispered in classified circles. It was alive, unfolding in real time and far from over. The adrenaline from the encounter still lingered in the C-17's cargo bay, but Lena Torres didn't relax. She leaned over the tablet again, scanning the fading radar signals. The rogue drone had been destroyed, or so it appeared. Yet a cold familiarity gripped her chest, an echo of missions long buried in classified files and forgotten hallways of military bureaucracy. 3 years ago, she had been at the forefront of the Air Force's covert electronic warfare program, tracking and neutralizing rogue drone threats. The program had started as a controlled experiment, testing unmanned craft capable of autonomous decision-making. Lena had been chosen not for her rank, but for her instinctive ability to predict the movements of machines that seemed to think faster than humans. Her call sign, Valkyrie, was earned under fire. On a mission in Syria, she had coordinated a rescue for a downed pilot. Using nothing but radar feeds, encrypted comms, and her gut instincts, she had guided an F-22 pilot through enemy territory to intercept hostile drones and extract the vulnerable airmen. That operation had gone flawlessly, or so it appeared on paper. But her next mission had not. It had been a routine tracking operation, or at least the brass had called it that. Lena had identified a rogue drone exhibiting erratic behavior near a civilian air corridor. The plan was simple. Falcon and another F-22 pilot would neutralize the threat while she guided them from the ground. But the drone moved faster, smarter, adapting to every maneuver. In seconds, it had trapped the Raptors, using the surrounding terrain and atmospheric conditions against them. Lena had given every order she could, but the mission ended in tragedy. 2 F-22 pilots, highly trained, elite, were lost. The incident was buried in classified reports. Officially, it was an operational anomaly. Unofficially, Lena carried the weight of that failure alone. It had haunted her, lingering in dreams and waking moments alike. Every decision, every calculation replayed endlessly in her mind. The Air Force had offered her a quiet desk assignment, a way to let her genius serve without endangering lives, but the guilt had never left. And now, staring at the fading radar blips above the Pacific, Lena realized it had returned. The pattern was unmistakable. The rogue drone wasn't just an isolated experiment. It was the same model, with modifications that made it more intelligent, more lethal. Its signature flickered across the radar in that familiar way. Tight loops, sudden accelerations, and unpredictable directional shifts. Someone or something had taken the same technology from her old mission and weaponized it. Her mind raced through possibilities. Could it be an international theft? Rogue contractors? Enemy operatives testing autonomous aerial warfare? Each theory led to the same conclusion. If this drone got closer to populated airspace, the consequences could be catastrophic. Lieutenant Colonel Scott, Lena said quietly, almost to herself. It's not over. It's back. Scott, seated nearby, looked at her with concern. You know it? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied the patterns, overlaying predictive grids and analyzing its projected course. She recognized subtle behavioral traits the drone exhibited, sort of digital signature that only someone with her experience could detect. This is the same drone I encountered in Syria, she admitted, finally speaking. Her voice was low, controlled, but carried a tension that made the crew stiffen. It's not human-controlled. It's adaptive. It thinks faster than any pilot we have. And it remembers. The younger crew members exchanged nervous glances. Most had never heard of Valkyrie before today. They only knew her as the quiet passenger sitting in the corner, typing silently on her tablet. Now, her words carried the weight of lived experience, of survival, of calculated command. Scott leaned in. You're saying it's the same technology from your last mission? Yes, Lena said. And it's been improved. Whoever's controlling it, or whatever is controlling it, has studied it. They know tactics. They know formations. They know how we respond. The reality of the situation sank in. This was no training exercise. This was a live threat, one that had evolved from her past failures and now loomed over the lives of her fellow pilots and crew. Falcon, she said over the encrypted comms. This is Valkyrie 1. I need you to adjust your intercept vector. Follow my predictive path. Trust the calculations, not your instruments. The drone has learned standard engagement patterns. We need to break them. On the other end, Falcon's voice was tense. Valkyrie, I trust you, but I've never seen anything like this. It's smart. Intelligence isn't a question anymore, she replied firmly. Adaptation is. I've been here before. I know how it moves. Follow my lead. As the F-22s adjusted their headings, Lena's mind flashed back to every detail of her failed mission. The heat of the Syrian desert, the whine of drone engines, the sudden silence when communications went dark, the helplessness as the Raptors disappeared from her screens. She had vowed never to let that happen again. Now she had a second chance. Hold tight, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. This time I won't fail. The C-17 rocked as another pocket of turbulence hit. Lena ignored it. She was focused entirely on the small blip now visible on the radar feed, the shape of a threat she had faced before, adapted to survive and honed to kill. Her fingers flew across the tablet, recalculating trajectories, predicting maneuvers, overlaying radar anomalies. The crew watched, rapt, as Lena's calm authority transformed the chaos into order. Every prediction she made seemed almost impossible, yet it worked. Every minor adjustment in heading or altitude she recommended aligned perfectly with the movements of the rogue drone. 3 minutes later, the blip split, creating multiple false echoes. Falcon cursed over the comms. "Decoys! It's trying to confuse us." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Ignore them. There's only one real signature, and I'll find it. Cougar, trust my guidance. Falcon, maintain formation but hold weapons fire. Wait for my mark." Her mind worked like a machine itself, filtering out false data, identifying patterns, predicting reactions. Every second brought the drone closer to the C-17, closer to the line between routine flight and disaster. 3, 2, 1 mark. Lena called, her voice sharp, commanding. The F-22s fired. Missiles streaked through the air, following her guidance. The rogue drone evaded some, deployed decoys, but Lena had anticipated the moves. One missile hit true, igniting the drone in a burst of fire that lit the clouds like a flare. Silence followed, punctuated only by the hum of the C-17's engines and the ragged breathing of the crew. Lena's fingers relaxed on the tablet, but her eyes never left the fading radar signature. "You did it," Falcon's voice came through, quiet, reverent. "I didn't think anyone could." "I didn't," Lena replied softly. "I just remembered how." Even as the immediate danger passed, Lena knew the ghost of her past was still alive. This encounter was far from over. Whoever had unleashed this drone had history with her, and this time they weren't going to make the same mistakes. The quiet passenger had returned to the cockpit, not as an observer, but as a guardian, ready to confront shadows from the past and threats yet unseen. The sky had calmed, but the war of wits between human and machine, and between Lena and her past, was just beginning. The calm that had settled over the C-17 after the first drone's destruction was fleeting. Lena Torres stared at the radar feed, her jaw tight, her mind racing. The blip that had exploded moments ago should have been gone, but a faint residual signature lingered, one almost imperceptible, yet familiar. Her stomach clenched. It wasn't over. "Lieutenant Colonel, we've got a return signal," she said, voice steady but urgent. "It's smaller, faster, and it's targeting us." Scott followed her gaze, frowning. "Another one? How can it reappear so quickly?" "That drone's been vaporized." "Not vaporized," Lena corrected. "Replicated. Someone upgraded it. Adaptive algorithms, autonomous decision-making. It's learning from our engagement." The cargo bay felt heavier suddenly, each crew member sensing the mounting tension. The younger enlisted men exchanged anxious glances. None of them had ever witnessed aerial combat of this intensity from a passenger's perspective. Yet Lena's calm command created an eerie sense of assurance. "Falcon, Cougar," she said over the encrypted comms, "we've got a second wave. Adjust formation to 20 degrees tighter. The target's ECM is stronger than before. Ignore HUD readings. Fly manually if necessary." Falcon's voice came tense. "Valkyrie, this isn't a training scenario anymore. This thing's predicting our every move. It's almost anticipating us." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Good. That's exactly what I needed to do so I can predict it." She adjusted her tablet, overlaying predictive trajectories with real-time radar echoes. Every minor fluctuation in the drone's movement, every deviation from standard flight patterns, she noted mentally, translating it into precise instructions for the Raptors. Outside, the sky was a turbulent sea of clouds. The rogue drone emerged from a bank of storm clouds like a ghost, metallic wings glinting in the sun. It was sleek, unmarked, and frighteningly fast. It fired bursts of electronic flares, blinding radar systems and creating decoys that mimicked the F-22's signatures. "Falcon, decoys are on your 6, Lena said calmly. "Do not engage. Maintain visual lock on my marker. Cougar, follow my left vector. Trust me." The Raptors banked sharply, each maneuver executed with precision, as if guided by an unseen hand. The drone adjusted immediately, analyzing their moves, sending out bursts of electronic interference to scramble targeting systems. Inside the C-17, Scott and Riley watched, awestruck, as Lena orchestrated the engagement like a seasoned conductor leading a deadly symphony. The drone fired 2 missiles in rapid succession. The first exploded harmlessly in the clouds. The second streaked dangerously close to the C-17, shaking the aircraft violently. Lena's hands were steady, her voice unwavering. "Minor correction. 2 degrees port, 3 degrees nose down. Hold steady. The next window is 30 seconds. Falcon, wait for my mark." Falcon's teeth clenched. This is insane. How is she calculating this? She's seeing the future. "She's not seeing the future," Riley whispered, almost in awe. "She's calculating it. Every variable, every response. She knows this machine inside out." The drone circled, deploying more decoys, making the Raptor pilots second-guess every lock. But Lena anticipated each maneuver. "Falcon, ignore the extra signatures. The real one is weaker, smaller. Follow my marker now." The F-22s pivoted as Lena's guidance cut through the electronic chaos. Missiles streaked toward the rogue drone, weaving around decoys. For a moment, the sky seemed frozen, the future held in Lena's calculated commands. A flash of light, a successful strike. The drone erupted, sending shards of metal and fire into the clouds. For a second, the crew allowed themselves relief. But Lena didn't relax. She knew the threat wasn't fully neutralized. Whoever had unleashed this machine had the capability to escalate. "Check the radar," she said. "It's not over. Expect residual signals. They might be attempting a second vector." Scott tapped the console, bringing up the radar feed. Tiny blips flickered in and out, almost imperceptible. Lena's gaze locked on them. "They're testing us," she murmured. "They're analyzing our response. This isn't about destruction, it's reconnaissance." Falcon's voice cut through the comms. "Valkyrie, what do we do now? This thing's smart, adaptive. I've never seen anything like it." Lena's eyes sharpened. "We continue. We lead it into a predictable path. Then we strike. Trust my calculations. Trust my timing. It's about patience now, not aggression." The C-17 shuddered again as another missile streaked past. Lena's calm demeanor never faltered. Her hands moved with surgical precision across the tablet, adjusting the aircraft systems and relaying exact instructions to the Raptors. Every minor correction in heading, every subtle altitude change, aligned perfectly with the predicted behavior of the drone. "You're not just guiding us," Falcon said over comms, awe in his voice. "You're controlling the battlefield." "That's the goal," Lena replied simply. "You survive by following the pattern. Don't improvise. Let me lead." For the next 10 minutes, the sky became a chessboard. Each maneuver was calculated, each move countered. The drone's AI attempted to outthink the pilots, deploying decoys, flares, and evasive bursts. Lena, however, anticipated every adjustment, predicting behavior patterns from her previous mission and decades of theoretical training. Finally, the rogue drone made a critical error. It moved too predictably, its trajectory now aligned with Lena's calculations. She called out, calm and commanding, "Falcon, now! Fire!" Missiles streaked through the air, and this time the strike was perfect. The rogue drone exploded in a fiery spectacle, debris scattering across the clouds. Silence returned to the comms. Inside the C-17, the crew exhaled collectively. Sweat-coated foreheads, hands trembled slightly. Lena remained calm, scanning for any residual signatures. "Target neutralized," she announced finally. Her voice was steady, almost casual, but beneath it lay the weight of responsibility, relief, and a knowing understanding that this was only the beginning. Falcon's voice returned, quiet, reverent. "Valkyrie, I didn't think anyone could handle that. You saved all of us." "I just remembered how," Lena replied softly, not looking away from the radar feed. She knew the battle in the sky was only one part of the war. The real fight against whoever had unleashed this technology was still ahead. The C-17 stabilized, the clouds parting to reveal clear skies. Yet every pilot and crew member on board knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The quiet passenger, the one no one noticed, had transformed into a guardian of the skies, orchestrating a deadly dance of man, machine, and instinct. Even as the adrenaline faded, Lena's eyes remained sharp. She scanned, calculated, predicted. She could rest only for a moment. The war against this new threat was far from over. And somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, she knew the enemy was watching, learning. Valkyrie 1 had returned, not just to the skies, but to confront ghosts she had never truly left behind. The sky above the Pacific shimmered with turbulence, streaked by clouds lit gold from the morning sun. The C-17 Globemaster shuddered gently, though the cargo crew barely noticed anymore. Their attention was fixed on Captain Lena Torres. She leaned over her tablet like a maestro at the podium, eyes darting across multiple radar feeds, satellite links, and predictive grids. The rogue drone wasn't just back. It was evolving faster than any standard defense protocol could handle. Falcon's F-22 sliced through the clouds in formation, Cougar trailing closely behind. The Raptor's HUDs flickered as the drone unleashed electronic countermeasures, scrambling their targeting systems. Lena's voice cut sharply through the comms. "Falcon, ignore the HUD. They're feeding false data. Visual confirmation only. Cougar, maintain left flank at 30 meters. Do not break formation unless I say." There was a pause, the only sound the whine of high-speed jet engines. Then Falcon responded, tense but resolute. "Copy, Valkyrie. Following your lead." Inside the C-17, Scott and Riley exchanged awed glances. They had seen Lena in action before, but now the stakes were higher. Every second mattered. A single misstep could send the C-17 spiraling into chaos or worse. The rogue drone darted again, metallic and precise, a predator testing the defenses of humans and machines alike. Missiles streaked past it, leaving trails of smoke in their wake. Some detonated on contact with decoys, others narrowly missed the aircraft. Lena's fingers moved over the tablet with calculated urgency, adjusting the C-17's auxiliary systems to create countersignals, masking the plane's true position. "Falcon, Cougar, listen carefully," she said. "I've mapped its attack vectors. The drone will attempt another lateral sweep in 15 seconds. Do not fire until my mark. Trust the timing. Deviation will trigger countermeasures." Falcon's voice crackled. "Valkyrie, you're talking about ignoring standard engagement protocols." "Yes," she replied evenly. "Because the drone has learned the standard protocol. It's adaptive. Follow my guidance, and you survive." The seconds ticked by like hours. Lena's mind raced, recalling every combat scenario she had ever studied and every mission she had led in secret. She filtered data, predicting the drone's movements while guiding the Raptors through maneuvers that defied standard aviation training. Each order she gave was precise, reducing chaos into a controllable rhythm. Suddenly, the drone split into multiple signatures, each one a decoy meant to confuse the pilots. Falcon's jaw tightened. Decoys again. It's taunting us. Ignore them, Lena said firmly. I've identified the primary signature. Focus on the one with the weakest radar cross-section. Follow my vector. Now. The Raptors banked sharply, cutting through cloud banks and sunlight, dodging flares and electronic pulses designed to disorient them. Lena guided them like a chess master, predicting the drone's every attempt to outmaneuver. Another missile streaked past the C-17, shaking the massive aircraft violently. Crew members gripped their seats, adrenaline pumping. Lena's voice remained calm, almost unnervingly so. Minor course correction. 3 degrees nose down, 1 degree starboard. Falcon, Cougar, adjust to my timing. We're going to trap it in a predicted loop. The F-22s executed perfectly, banking and twisting according to Lena's commands. The drone adjusted as well, but its movements were slightly delayed, just enough for her calculations to remain ahead. Prepare to fire, she instructed. 3, 2, 1 now. The Raptors unleashed a coordinated volley of missiles. The drone deployed more countermeasures, metallic flares, radar confusing echoes, and false signals, but Lena's calculations anticipated each one. One missile struck the drone, igniting a controlled explosion. Another hit a decoy, confirming the primary target's location. The C-17 shuddered again from nearby explosions, but Lena remained focused, issuing corrections. Hold formation. Do not overcompensate. Falcon, verify visual confirmation. Cougar, ready for secondary strike. Seconds later, the rogue drone attempted a desperate vertical escape. Lena's eyes flicked across the data. Predictable, she muttered. Cougar, mark vertical trajectory. Falcon, converge from above. Timing, 4 seconds. The F-22s followed her guidance flawlessly. The final missile struck the drone at its highest altitude, disintegrating it into shards that scattered across the clouds like fireworks. Silence fell. Inside the C-17, the crew allowed themselves a collective exhale. Lena's face remained calm, yet her eyes reflected the intensity of the engagement. Confirmed neutralization, she said, voice steady, but tinged with relief. Falcon's voice came through, quieter this time. Valkyrie. I've never seen anyone coordinate like that. That was extraordinary. You saved all of us. I didn't, Lena replied softly. I just remembered. Her mind raced even as the immediate threat dissipated. The rogue drone had been destroyed, yes. But the incident confirmed a terrifying reality. The technology was out there, and someone or some organization was willing to use it against U.S. assets. The C-17 pilots, though exhausted, realized the truth of her words. Lena wasn't just a passenger. She was the operative, the guardian, the strategist who could turn chaos into order. Scott cleared his throat, finally breaking the stunned silence. Captain, I don't know how to say this, but you're not just a passenger. You just ran the sky. Lena didn't look up. I did what needed to be done. Remember, survival isn't about fighting harder. It's about thinking ahead. Riley, still gripping his console, nodded in agreement. And that, Valkyrie, is why they call you that. Not for reputation, but because you guard the skies quietly. Nobody else can do what you just did. The sun emerged fully from behind the clouds, illuminating the C-17 in warm light. Outside, the Pacific stretched endlessly, calm now, but beneath its surface of serenity lay a world of threats and shadows. Lena knew the battle today was only one skirmish in a much larger war, a war where humans and machines tested the limits of intelligence, strategy, and instinct. Falcon's voice broke through again. We owe you our lives. And the C-17. That was precision coordination beyond anything I thought possible. You didn't just guide us, you commanded the battle. Lena finally allowed herself a faint smile. Command isn't about ego. It's about responsibility. You follow. You survive. That's all. As the F-22S peeled off to return to base, Lena turned back to the radar feed, scanning for residual signals. She knew that this encounter wasn't over. Whoever had unleashed the drone had intentions, strategies, and contingencies that might outmatch today's success. And she would need every ounce of her experience, instinct, and intellect for what lay ahead. The quiet passenger had fully revealed herself, not as an observer, but as the Valkyrie who commanded the skies, turning the threat of invisible machines into a calculated victory. And even as the engines hummed steadily, and the sun bathed the aircraft in gold, Lena's mind was already preparing for the next move. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The skies had cleared, leaving a calm blue above the Pacific, but the tension inside the C-17 was far from dissipated. The cargo bay hummed softly, the whine of the engines filling the space as if to remind the crew of the fragility of their survival. Sweat-drenched faces turned toward Captain Lena Torres. Though outwardly composed, her eyes betrayed the weight of what had just transpired. For hours, the crew had watched a quiet passenger transform into a tactical commander of deadly precision. They had seen the impossible happen, the rogue drone neutralized, the F-22s guided flawlessly, and the massive C-17 maneuvered with surgical accuracy. Yet now that the immediate danger had passed, the enormity of it began to settle in. Lieutenant Colonel Scott approached Lena cautiously, clearing his throat. "Captain, Valkyrie, I don't even know where to start. That was beyond anything I've seen in my 20 years flying." Lena looked up briefly, her expression calm, almost weary. "It was necessary," she said simply. "Nothing more. Nothing less." Riley leaned against the console, exhaling deeply. "Necessary? Captain, you just ran a live engagement with adaptive AI drones that were tracking us and probably recording every move we made. You commanded the Raptors remotely, guided them through evasive maneuvers, and neutralized the threat. That's not just necessary, that's extraordinary." Lena shrugged lightly, almost dismissively. "Extraordinary isn't the goal. Survival is. You follow orders, you survive. That's the metric, not recognition." The young enlisted crew exchanged glances, some whispering, some openly staring at the quiet passenger who had just rewritten rules of aerial command. For them, Valkyrie wasn't just a name, it was a legend brought to life. Scott shook his head. "I still can't believe it. Every calculation, every instruction, it was like you were seeing the future. How did you anticipate every movement, every decoy, every missile?" Lena's eyes darkened slightly as she recalled the mission from 3 years ago, the one that had haunted her through retirement. "Experience," she said softly, "and a willingness to pay attention when others don't. I've seen this before. I learned the patterns. I made mistakes. I'm not making them again." The memory of that past mission lingered heavily in her mind. 2 F-22 pilots had been lost under her guidance, victims of the very technology she now faced. The guilt had driven her to retire, to disappear into the quiet background of the Air Force, taking on desk assignments, teaching young officers how to read signals, how to anticipate threats. But this encounter, the rogue drone, its adaptive tactics, the live engagement was a reminder that the past never truly lets go. "Captain," Scott said carefully, "the brass will want a full report. They're going to want details, names, call signs, authorizations. They're going to want to know how Valkyrie took control of the situation." Lena's eyes flicked to him, her expression unflinching. "They won't understand. They'll call it unauthorized, reckless, even dangerous. But I did what was required to protect every life on this plane and every pilot in the sky. Riley nodded slowly. And they'll try to punish you for it. You know that, right? I know, she admitted, leaning back against the wall of the cargo bay. And I don't care. Recognition isn't the goal. Survival is. For a moment, silence filled the space. Outside, the clouds drifted lazily over the endless Pacific. Inside, the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of instruments punctuated the quiet reflection. Then Falcon's voice crackled over the encrypted comm. Valkyrie, I need to say this. Without your guidance, we wouldn't have survived. All the F-22s, the C-17, none of us would have made it. You're the best I've ever flown with. Lena didn't respond immediately. She simply adjusted the tablet, scanning for any lingering anomalies. Her mind remained focused on the threat, analyzing, calculating, anticipating. The battle might have ended, but the war was far from over. Thank you, she finally said softly. That's all I need to hear. The comm fell silent again, leaving the crew to absorb what had just happened. Young officers whispered about Valkyrie's precision, her calm under fire, her ability to command pilots she had never met directly. Some stared at her as if seeing a superhero in civilian form. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief. Scott finally spoke again. Captain, if I may, how do you carry all of this? The responsibility, the calculations, the memory of those lost? Most people would have broken under this pressure. Lena's gaze drifted to the window, watching sunlight glint off the clouds. Her voice was quiet but firm. You carry it because you have to. Because every second counts. You don't get the luxury of emotion when lives depend on your decisions. You think, you act, you survive. That's all. She turned back to her tablet, already scanning, already calculating. Even though the immediate threat had been neutralized, she knew the rogue drone's presence signaled something far larger. Whoever had deployed it had knowledge of her past operations, intelligence on her tactics, and likely access to resources beyond standard military control. The first wave is gone, she said softly, almost to herself. But they're learning. They'll come back. And next time, they'll be smarter. Scott placed a hand on her shoulder, almost reflexively. Then we'll be ready. With you leading, Valkyrie, we stand a chance. She allowed herself a faint smile. I don't lead for recognition. I lead because someone has to. And I won't let the past repeat itself. The flight continued in silence for a few moments. Crew members adjusted equipment, double-checked instruments, and processed the surreal events that had just unfolded. Every now and then, someone would glance at Lena, recognizing the quiet strength she carried. She had been the calm in the storm, the mind that saw patterns others couldn't, the hand that directed survival when chaos reigned. As the C-17 approached the recovery airspace, Lena finally allowed herself to relax slightly. She had saved lives today, yes, but the weight of the encounter remained heavy. The rogue drone had been neutralized, but the shadow of its origin lingered. Someone had unleashed it, someone who knew the intricacies of her past missions, someone who might be planning the next attack. She exhaled slowly. The fight isn't over, she murmured, almost to herself. It never is. The aircraft touched down at a forward operating base, and the crew began the process of disembarking. Outside, the sun reflected off the runway, highlighting the aftermath of a mission that would remain classified, unseen, unrecognized by the world, but not by those who had lived through it. Falcon landed nearby, his F-22s taxiing in formation. He approached the C-17, saluted sharply, and then extended a hand. Valkyrie. Officially, you're unauthorized, unrecognized, but unofficially, You're the reason we all made it." Lena shook his hand briefly, her expression calm but resolute. "That's enough for me. Recognition isn't the goal. Survival is." As Falcon walked away, Lena watched the young crew, the F-22 pilots, and the airmen bustling around the base. They were safe for now. She had guided them through the storm, saved lives, and ensured that history would not repeat itself. But she knew the shadow of the drone program, and those who had created it would return. And when they did, the battle would be even deadlier. For now, the quiet passenger had taken command, faced the threat, and emerged victorious. But in her mind, the mission was only beginning. Valkyrie 1 was no longer just a call sign. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a fighter, prepared to confront whatever shadows the future might bring. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the runway, Lena Torres already began planning her next move. The fight had ended, but the war against adaptive machines, unseen enemies, and her own past was far from over. The Valkyrie had returned, and she was ready. The sun had begun its descent over the Pacific horizon, painting the runway in shades of orange and gold. But inside Lena Torres, the battle was far from over. Though the rogue drone had been neutralized, and the F-22s had returned safely to base, the encounter had confirmed a chilling reality. Someone had orchestrated this attack, studied her methods, and adapted technology capable of learning, evolving, and killing. Inside the quiet operations room, Lena reviewed every piece of intelligence she could access. Satellite imagery, radar logs, flight telemetry, and encrypted communications, all of it ran through her mind like a river of data. Every anomaly, every unexplained blip, every irregular transmission could be a clue to the mastermind behind the rogue drones. Scott approached cautiously, sensing her intensity. "Captain, you've been at this for hours. Maybe it's time to rest." She didn't look up. Rest won't help. They're out there, watching, analyzing. If I pause, they gain time. And I can't afford that. Riley, sitting beside her, shook his head. "It's not just the drones. Whoever built them knows tactics, they know patterns, and now they know you've returned. You're a target, Lena." Her fingers flew across the tablet, pulling up predictive maps. Targets can't be avoided, they can only be anticipated. And anticipation requires preparation. Outside, the F-22 pilots conducted routine checks on their aircraft, oblivious to the intensity of Lena's work. Falcon, Cougar, and the other Raptors had followed her guidance to the letter, saving themselves, the C-17, and countless others. Yet even they were beginning to understand that Valkyrie wasn't a call sign. It was a force of instinct, intellect, and experience far beyond what anyone else had seen. Lena's thoughts drifted back to the missions that had forged her. She remembered the Syrian desert, the heat, the buzzing of rogue drones above enemy positions, and the crushing weight of the 2 F-22 pilots she had failed to save. That mission had forced her into retirement, but it had never truly left her. The lessons she had learned, the calculations, the predictions, the understanding of adaptive AI were now more crucial than ever. Her tablet pinged. A signal had been detected, a faint encrypted transmission that matched the signature of the rogue drone. Lena zoomed in, her eyes scanning the patterns. This wasn't just a passive transmission. It was a test and assessment. Whoever was controlling these drones was gathering intelligence, analyzing their weaknesses, learning from every engagement. "They're already adapting," she murmured. "And they'll strike again, soon." Scott placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we prepare, together." Lena allowed herself a brief nod. For the first time since the engagement, she looked around the operations room, taking in the young crew, the experienced officers, and the pilots who had witnessed her in action. They had survived because of her, But now they needed more than guidance. They needed strategy. First, she said, her voice firm, commanding attention, we identify every possible vector for the next attack. We track communications, study flight paths, and map potential targets. This isn't just about intercepting drones. It's about understanding who is deploying them and why. Riley tapped at his console. The rogue drone's design is unlike anything in standard military inventory. It's advanced, adaptive, and autonomous. Whoever controls it has resources far beyond standard operatives. Lena didn't flinch. And that makes it dangerous, but not unbeatable. We have the advantage: knowledge, experience, and the ability to predict behavior. Machines can adapt, yes, but they also follow patterns. And patterns can be exploited. Hours passed. The sun sank below the horizon, casting long shadows over the runway. Lena barely noticed. She worked tirelessly, pulling together a digital map of possible deployment areas, triangulating communication nodes, and calculating engagement strategies. Each calculation, each prediction, each contingency plan was a small step toward preparing for the inevitable next wave. Falcon returned to the operations room, his expression sober. Valkyrie, I need to know, what's our real threat? The drone was one thing, but you seem to know something more. Lena looked at him, her eyes sharp. The drone wasn't the weapon, it was the test. Whoever is behind this is gauging our response, analyzing our tactics, and improving with every encounter. The next attack won't be the same. It'll be smarter, faster, and deadlier. Cougar stepped forward, frowning. So what's the plan? How do we stop it? Lena's gaze swept across the room, settling on each of them. We prepare. We anticipate. And we act decisively. The first engagement showed us their methods. The next one will show us their weakness. And we will exploit it. She pulled up a simulation on the tablet, projecting a 3D map of the Pacific airspace. Drones' predicted paths, adaptive maneuvers, and countermeasure strategies were all overlaid in a web of digital precision. Lena pointed to the vectors. Here's where we'll need to anticipate their entry points. Here's where we can control engagement, funnel them into predictable patterns, and neutralize the threat before it reaches populated areas. Scott leaned in, impressed. You're turning intelligence into strategy. That's brilliant. It has to be, Lena said. Every second counts. Every decision matters. Lives depend on it. And we can't afford mistakes, not like last time. The memory of her past failures loomed in her mind, a shadow she could never fully escape. The 2 F-22 pilots lost in Syria had haunted her for years, reminders that even a perfect calculation could still fail in the real world. Now she had a second chance, not just to protect the crew and the pilots, but to confront the ghosts of her past. Falcon's voice broke the heavy silence. Valkyrie, after what I saw today, I'd follow you anywhere. We trust you. Whatever you need to do, we're with you. Lena allowed herself a faint smile, brief but genuine. That's good, because the next engagement won't be easy. Whoever is behind this has studied us, learned our weaknesses, and is preparing to strike. We have to be ready, not just to react, but to anticipate, to control, to win before the fight begins. Riley nodded, typing furiously at his console. Then we begin. I'll start mapping all recent anomalies, cross-reference every flight path, and track unusual transmissions. If there's a pattern, we'll find it. Scott looked at her, concern etched on his face. Captain, you've taken on the weight of this alone for years. Don't let it consume you. We're a team now. You don't have to carry it by yourself. Lena paused, looking out at the fading horizon. The sky was beautiful, deceptive in its calm. Beneath it, Threats lurked: machines, operators, and strategies that could strike at any moment. Yet she felt a renewed determination. The quiet passenger was no longer just a survivor. She was a strategist, a guardian, and a Valkyrie, ready to confront whatever shadow approached next. "We don't wait for them to strike," she said finally. "We predict. We control. We prepare. And when they make their move, we'll be ready." The room fell silent for a moment, each person digesting the gravity of her words. Outside, the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep, ominous purple. The calm of twilight belied the tension in the operations room, where plans, predictions, and calculations converged into a single objective: survival and victory against a threat that had already learned too much. And as Lena continued scanning, calculating, and preparing, the young crew and seasoned pilots alike realized one undeniable truth: Valkyrie 1 had returned, not just as a pilot, but as a force of strategy, foresight, and unwavering resolve. The battle today had been won, but the war against adaptive, intelligent threats was only beginning. And Lena Torres, the quiet passenger no longer, would face it head-on. Night had fallen over the forward operating base, the Pacific dark and endless beyond the runway lights. Inside the operations room, Lena Torres stared at the screens, each one displaying streams of data, encrypted signals, flight paths, satellite feeds. Every anomaly, every trace of electronic interference, every blip on radar was analyzed, cataloged, and anticipated. The rogue drones had been a warning, a test, but now Lena was ready for the real confrontation. The mastermind behind the attacks had revealed themselves in subtle ways: an encrypted transmission pattern, a signature in the drone's adaptive algorithms, and tactical moves that mirrored her own past missions. Someone had studied her, learned her instincts, and built a machine designed to counter her genius. But Lena had one advantage they hadn't anticipated. She knew herself better than anyone. Scott leaned in, concern etched on his face. "Captain, the intel we've gathered points to a launch site in the northern Pacific corridor. Small, remote, heavily defended. Whoever's controlling this has a high-tech setup, possibly rogue contractors, or a black market operative." Lena nodded. "I expected as much. But their location is predictable. They'll need line of sight, network control, and power sources. That makes them vulnerable. And tonight, we hit them before they strike again." Falcon and Cougar stood nearby, reviewing the flight plan Lena had drawn up. "This is unprecedented," Falcon admitted. "We're talking about a full-scale strike against a high-tech rogue facility." "And you'll be leading it?" Lena's eyes were steady. "I'll coordinate. You'll execute. Timing is everything. The drones adapt, yes, but human foresight is still faster than machine logic if used correctly." The plan was precise. The C-17 would act as the mobile command hub, coordinating the F-22s in real time, with Lena predicting the drones' every move. They would strike at the launch site, neutralize the rogue operators, and disable the adaptive drone network before it could deploy again. Every second was calculated, every maneuver rehearsed in Lena's mind. As they approached the designated strike zone, clouds thickened and electronic interference increased. Lena's fingers danced across the tablet, adjusting communications, analyzing signals, and predicting enemy countermeasures. "Falcon, Cougar, Formation Delta. Maintain altitude and spacing. Their automated defense grid will detect us. But we can neutralize it if we synchronize." The F-22s banked in perfect harmony, trusting every instruction from the quiet passenger who had become their guide, strategist, and Valkyrie. Lena's mind was a web of calculations, each strand anticipating enemy moves, each node connected to potential contingencies. The rogue facility came into view, a small cluster of metallic structures, on a remote island, drones buzzing around it like swarming locusts. Automated defense systems activated, tracking the incoming F-22s with precision. Predictive engagement required, Lena muttered. They'll fire first, react second. We'll exploit the delay. Missiles streaked toward the Raptors. Electronic pulses scrambled targeting systems, and decoy drones deployed in formation. Lena guided the pilots through every maneuver, predicting every adjustment, every counter, and every evasive tactic. Falcon, left vector 2 degrees. Cougar, cover flank. Engage only on my mark. Do not fire prematurely. The F-22s twisted and turned, weaving through fire and interference, executing maneuvers with near-perfect precision. Lena's voice remained calm, commanding, and unyielding. Seconds later, a concentrated missile strike destroyed the primary drone control hub, disabling communications and neutralizing the adaptive drones. Lena's calculations were flawless. Falcon and Cougar confirmed visually. The facility was in chaos, operators fleeing, machines malfunctioning. But Lena wasn't finished. She knew the mastermind was still inside, orchestrating from a hidden control room. Every adaptive response, every signal she intercepted, pointed to a single location within the facility. Target identified, she said sharply. There's one human controlling this. High-level encryption. They're trying to override the network. We stop them now. Falcon's voice was tense. Valkyrie, are you going in yourself? No, Lena replied. I coordinate. You execute. Timing is everything. We cut off their escape, disable their systems, and neutralize the operator. The Raptors moved in perfect formation, executing Lena's plan with surgical precision. The mastermind attempted to flee via a small aircraft, but Lena had anticipated this move. Falcon intercepted, disabling the escape vehicle without harm to its surroundings. Inside the control room, the mastermind, a figure cloaked in shadows, watched as their plans unraveled. Lena's calculations had accounted for every contingency. The figure's expression was a mix of disbelief and respect. They had underestimated Valkyrie. Who are you? The figure demanded over a secure line, their voice filtered and tense. Lena didn't answer directly. You've tested my limits. You've studied my patterns. But human foresight is still faster than machine adaptation. That's why this ends now. With a final series of precise commands, Lena disabled the remaining drone network, ensuring no adaptive systems remained operational. The mastermind's plans collapsed, their technological advantage eradicated, and their facility neutralized. Falcon and Cougar confirmed success. Valkyrie, it's done. The threat is neutralized. Lena allowed herself a brief exhale. Relief washed over her, but only slightly. She had faced the ghost of her past missions, the rogue drones, and the mastermind behind them. Each challenge had tested her intellect, her instinct, and her courage. And each had proven that the quiet passenger aboard the C-17 was no ordinary operative. She was Valkyrie, guardian of the skies. Scott approached, clapping her on the shoulder. Captain, you did it? Not just the drones, not just the strike. You faced the mastermind, coordinated the pilots, and neutralized the threat before it escalated. I've never seen anything like it. Lena's expression was calm, but there was a spark of satisfaction. I did what needed to be done. Recognition isn't necessary. Success is measured in survival, not applause. Falcon, looking at her with a mix of awe and respect, said softly, Valkyrie. The pilots, the crew, they owe their lives to you. And now, the entire Pacific corridor is safe because of you. She allowed herself a small smile, the weight of the past months and years settling slightly. Then that's enough. Lives saved. Mission accomplished. That's all that matters. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light over the base. Lena Torres finally allowed herself a moment of peace. She had faced the rogue drones, neutralized the mastermind, and ensured the safety of the skies. Yet even as she exhaled, she knew vigilance was eternal. Shadows would always exist, threats would always rise, and human ingenuity would always be tested. But for now, Valkyrie had prevailed. The quiet passenger had become a legend in her own right, a strategist, guardian, and fighter who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. And as she watched the F-22's return to base, the C-17 hummed steadily on the tarmac, and the calm waves of the Pacific stretched endlessly into the distance. Lena Torres felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. The war might continue, the threats might evolve, and the future might remain uncertain. But Valkyrie would always rise, eyes sharp, mind calculating, instincts honed, ready to command the skies and protect those who could not protect themselves. For the quiet passenger had returned, not to observe, but to dominate, to lead, and to survive. And the world would never forget the Valkyrie.